Nature has lots of surprises, good for some wildlife, bad for others. Each day provides a new challenge. Will each species survive? What are the number of animals and plants out there? And ultimately, what's the science behind those numbers?
There's one over there.
Oh yeah. Let's see. That makes 15. Hey, where's Greg?
He's over there.
Let's go. Hey, Greg.
Hi. We're finishing up another winter bird count here in our community. Thousands of volunteers all over the country take part in annual bird counts to get a population census. Using those numbers, people can determine the dynamics or trends and patterns for bird populations. Okay, let's see your tally sheet.
Here it is.
Looks like the numbers are close to last year's count.
Didn't we have a record number of robins?
That's right. Factors like weather, habitat, and human activities can affect a bird population.
But there can also be changes in population when nothing unusual seems to happen.
It's kind of fun to see how bird populations change from year to year.
And scientists are able to use the data to determine migration patterns, changes in population, and other trends for birds and other animal species as well.
Some robins migrate thousands of miles, flying at over 30 miles per hour. Holy mackerel!
In Alaska, caribou spend a large part of their time grazing on the land. When they've eaten the grass in one area, they move to another area with more grass and other food. When the temperature drops, causing food sources to diminish, migratory birds fly south. Why do some populations of animals and plants survive and others die? Population dynamics can provide some answers. I visited with a scientist who studies different animal populations and how they interact with each other. What do you do as a wildlife biologist?
My primary specialty is examining relationships between wildlife and their habitats. Well, population dynamics is generally how populations change over time. And some factors that are related to population dynamics would be like survival rates or death rates or birth rates. A good example to understand population dynamics would be to use the northern bobwhite or quail. Quail survival patterns change by year and change by season, and it's often a function of habitat qualities.
How do you find out that there's a problem with an ecosystem or individual species within that ecosystem?
In general, one really good way to monitor populations over time would be to evaluate keystone species, which are species that are generally indicators of environmental quality or ecosystem stability. An example of a keystone species would be the northern bobwhite, which is generally a good indicator of the quality of early successional habitats.
Changes in populations can be caused by any number of things. There are abiotic or non-living influences like weather and temperature, and then there are biotic or living factors like diseases or predator-prey interactions.
Predator-prey relationships are certainly one of the most complex type of relationships in nature. For instance, there are a multitude of factors that are related to predators and how they take their prey. Food, water, space, weather, habitat quality all influence how predators select prey over time. A good example would be to look at the bobcat, which is a species frequently found throughout North America. One of the upper-level mammalian carnivores that we have on the continent. Bobcats eat a wide variety of prey. One focal prey species would be rabbits. It's very complex to look at the relationship between bobcats and rabbits because of habitats that both of those species have evolved within. For instance, if you wanted to look at how bobcats are affecting rabbits over time, you would have to know what other prey species are available for bobcats, what other competitors bobcats have in that system, and from the rabbit standpoint, what its forage base is and the quality of habitats that it's encountering over time. Two responses one could observe when evaluating predator-prey relationships would be a numerical response or a functional response. A numerical response would be where you have more predators following an increased availability of prey. A functional response, on the other hand, would be where predators begin to concentrate their use in areas that have a high abundance of prey. So you don't necessarily see an increased number of predators, you simply see an increased predator use of that area because there's a greater availability of prey.
Overpopulation problems can do harm to an ecosystem. For example, white-tailed deer populations have rapidly increased throughout North America. These deer can readily adapt to new habitats, reproduce very quickly, and have few major predators except man. When they overpopulate an area, it can impact other animals and plants in that ecosystem.
In general, species that become endangered are those that are not able to withstand or adapt to large-scale environmental changes. A good example would be the gray wolf, which once inhabited large portions of North America. And because they were not able to withstand high harvests from man and large-scale environmental changes, they were pushed to northern portions of their range.
How can people help improve conditions with and between populations in an ecosystem?
Man has the charge and the ability to alter landscapes and to change how populations are responding to the landscape. So using the best information that we have available, we can improve our decision makings and decide on a course of action to take. So changes are normal in the population equation, but when unusual things happen, natural or man-made, it can radically change, even wipe out a population.
In the early 1900s, people didn't fully understand how population cycles worked. Mountain lions on the north rim of the Grand Canyon were hunted so extensively that they were no longer able to help control the deer population in that region.
Other factors contributing to the deer overpopulation were above average precipitation, a ban on hunting does, and a dramatic reduction in livestock grazing in the region.
Combined, all of these biotic and abiotic elements caused a dramatic deer population boom.
Eventually, the number of deer rose above the carrying capacity of the North Rim, and thousands of deer died of starvation.
America's national symbol of strength, the bald eagle, became so fragile that its numbers slipped dangerously close to extinction. They were heavily impacted by human use of pesticides, which caused eagle shells to become too thin to protect the baby birds. Because of the eagle's national status, hunting the eagle was prohibited. So hunting was not reducing the population, but the use of some pesticides had the unintended effect of diminishing eagle populations.
Here are some abiotic factors: changes in shelter, water, temperature, or the environment.
You can see Indian drawings in caves and on rocks in the southwestern United States.
Some show animals like herons as a part of the early Indians' environment. There are no aquatic habitats there now, and no herons either.
Population dynamics is an important concept for understanding terrestrial organisms. It's also an essential principle for those studying marine and aquatic life.
Well, you can't tell exactly how many fish are there. To do that, the only way to do that might be to drain the water. Kind of defeats the purpose. Since we can't see the fish, we have to devise ways to determine what the populations are doing. Generally, we do that by sampling, by using nets of some sort, perhaps blocking off an area and killing all the fish in a very small area and counting them all and measuring them all. We also use electric fishing in the freshwater areas, and that stuns the fish and allows us to count them and return them to the water.
Tacklebox brain teaser. An apex predator is an animal that A, hunts at night, B, eats only one type of prey, C, is on top of the food chain, or D, eats plants.
This is the Chesapeake Bay. Researchers at the Virginia Institute of Marine Science are trying to better understand what's happening with the bay's fish populations.
My specialty is figuring out methods for determining what's going on in a population. How many fish are out there, what's their mortality rate, how many are being caught, what's that doing to the population.
It's a very constant and dynamic flow, inflow and outflow of fish species throughout a year. It supports a complex array of finfish species and shellfish species.
We have wind and currents and temperature and salinity and how much food is available, how many predators are in the area. You can't get at certain life stages very easily. When they're out at sea, it's sort of a mystery. Where are they going? What are they doing? What's happening to them? Biotic refers to something living. So a biotic stressor could be an exotic animal that's come into the ecosystem. It's never been there before. The ecosystem doesn't know how to deal with it, and it disrupts everything. As opposed to abiotic, which is non-biological, so it could be temperature extreme, salt coming in, too much fresh water, not enough fresh water, that kind of thing.
Here's the answer to that Tacklebox brain teaser. The answer is C. An apex predator is an animal that's on top of its food chain and has no natural predators in that chain. A shark is a good example.
For a long time, scientists have known that ecosystems are very complex and that, particularly with fish, that there are a wide array of predator-prey interactions. Striped bass are known to feed on blue crab. When man harvests striped bass at high levels, it will reduce the striped bass population. Therefore, that may be a benefiting result to the blue crab. Conversely, if striped bass populations are at extremely high levels of abundance, it's suspected at this point that that could have a negative effect on the blue crab due to the predator-prey relationship there.
One example of the population dynamics that we look at in the freshwater systems would be the bass bluegill populations in private ponds. The bass feed on the young bluegill, but if there are too many young bluegill, they begin to feed on the eggs of the bass so that the reproduction of the bass is inhibited.
Recently, a new line of thinking regarding how to develop fisheries management plans has emerged, and it's encouraging because it's one that incorporates both the dynamics of how fishermen interact with the bay or the ocean, as well as what the fish are going through and the experiences and processes that they're faced with.
There are few fish that swim faster than the bluefin tuna. Researchers have found that a bluefin tuna can swim at speeds of up to 55 miles per hour, making it a very hard fish for predators to catch.
Sometimes it takes the big picture to show why some populations suffer. Using these images from the U.S. Geological Survey, you can see the way Baltimore, Maryland, and Washington, D.C. looked in the early 1900s. The red represents the expansion of these areas over time. Notice how surrounding habitats have disappeared as the cities have grown. I recently met with Johnathan Dearbone, a conservation specialist. He works to conserve natural habitats for many species of plants and animals at locations like this one at the Bluebonnet Swamp Nature Center.
The loss of animal habitat in our country is a very big problem. In most cases, the animals that get displaced have nowhere to go and usually don't survive. Nature Conservancy is the largest nonprofit conservation organization in the world. Well, the Nature Conservancy has protected over 300,000 acres in the state of Louisiana, and those habitats range from coastal marshes to longleaf pine forests.
Name some of the animals and plants that benefit from your conservation efforts.
The black bear, the bald eagle, the bog flame flower, and the wild cocoa orchid. There are many different types of plants and animals that live here at Bluebonnet Swamp Natural Area, including but not limited to the bald cypress, the barred owl, some alligators, snakes, a little bird called the prothonotary warbler, and raccoons. This entire area is completely surrounded by residential as well as commercial development. This green space is great for recreational as well as habitat protection and environmental educational opportunities. The Nature Conservancy, along with other conservation organizations, work to preserve natural habitats in urban settings all over the United States.
Population cycles could be interrupted by natural events like hurricanes,
Fires.
or snow and ice storms.
Also man-made influences like harvesting trees,
Construction of homes
filling in wetlands for development,
and spraying chemicals harmful to many species.
But man can also intervene in a positive way. In longleaf pine forest, for instance, rangers use prescribed burns to help the endangered red cockaded woodpecker.
They evolved in these open pine stands, and everything about their needs is based on open, fire-maintained longleaf pine trees.
Did you know that in the past 50 years, there's been a considerable decline in the number of many amphibians around the globe? While many researchers are studying the decline, the causes are still unknown.
It seems to me we could apply population dynamics with humans in reality game shows and predict the outcome.
I've got it. A test situation. You have your classic uninhabited island. Take a look and identify the parts of this environment and its population changes and interaction possibilities. Let's make it a perfect little island with wildlife at carrying capacity, meaning the land can support all the life on it. No harsh winters to kill off foliage. In fact, birds migrate here during the winter months, providing a whole new menu of food for the island inhabitants.
But consider if this island were chosen for a reality TV show. And what if contestants and TV crews
Decided to stay instead of leaving at the end of taping?
an island that had once supported a few wildcats, crocodiles, thousands of lizards, and their buffet of insects would suddenly become a food source for another layer of predators, the non-native humans.
Quick! What are the biotic parts of this environmental equation?
wildcats and plants.
Crocodiles, lizards, and insects.
Don't forget about the people. And what about the abiotic parts of the equation?
Let's see. Non-living. The weather.
The land needed for plant growth.
Good.
How about the air?
Yes.
And water.
Yes. All these elements help to determine population dynamics of an ecosystem. We'll see you next time.
If we survive.
Hey, how y'all doing? We're wrapping up another blah, 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 blah.
Stand by. So exciting.
Of an ecosystem.
Interrupt by natural events. It's so slippery.
To learn more, visit the Enviro-Tacklebox website.